Hi there, I'm Eric Siegel with ericstrains.com. Today we're going to be checking out something a little bit different. This is yet another beautiful Lionel tinplate reproduction made by MTH, and it's something that I've had my eye on for quite a while. This is the number 214 Armored Motor Car outfit. Alright, so this is something I've had my eye on for a few years now. MTH cataloged this back in 2013, and I was lucky enough to get this as a Christmas present from my dad this last Christmas of 2015. My dad usually gets me one tinplate item each year for Christmas. Usually it's a standard gauge car, but last year I asked him for this set and he was kind enough to get it for me, so here it is. The original armored motor car set was produced by Lionel between 1917 and 1919. Now, they actually made two different sets. There was one that sold for $8 and one that sold for $6.50. Now, the $8 set had the motor car up front, and then it had two supply cars, which looked a little bit different than these ammunition cars that we have here. And then it also included an oval of track that had a couple straight pieces as well as a transformer. The cheaper set, which is what we've got reproduced here, had the armored motor car and then two ammunition cars. And then rather than an oval of track, it had just a circle of track without any straight pieces, but it also came with a transformer. Now, the fact that these sets were made between 1917 and 1919 was no coincidence. As many of you know, 1917 was the year that the U.S. entered into World War I, and then the war ended in 1919. And so Joshua Lionel Cowan, being the shrewd businessman that he was certainly not going to let an opportunity like the war pass him by, and so these sets were put out to take advantage of the current events of the day. And in fact, the advertisements for these sets encouraged boys to play war, and that they did. I'm sure many boys got these sets back then, and using their imaginations, they pretended they were over in Europe fighting the war. Lionel produced these sets in two colors. They first did them in sort of a gunmetal gray color, and then later on they did them in the drab green color that you see here. I think I like the green better because it looks more like a military train set that way. Now, MTH has been reproducing this set for a number of years. They did both versions of the sets and both colors. They've reproduced it many times under the MTH Tinplate Traditions name, and then in 2013 they did it under the Lionel Corporate Tinplate name, and they did it in the green color that you see here. Anyway, as you can see, this is a gorgeous set. MTH did a great job on the reproduction. This thing is all metal. There's very little, if any, plastics on this thing. It's got that wonderful baked-on shiny enamel like the pre-war trains had. Really doesn't get much better. This is a true toy, and it really exemplifies that beautiful simplicity that pre-war trains were all about, and that's why I love these things so much. Don't get me wrong, I love the modern scale stuff, but there's something nostalgic and heartwarming about this pre-war stuff, and that's why my collection of this pre-war stuff is continuing to grow. Now, because this set is so simple, this is not going to be a very long review. There's really not much to review. The motorized unit only goes in one direction. It doesn't even have an E unit or digital command control or sounds or anything like that. It's very simple. And then we've got these two incredibly simple ammunition cars behind it. So we're going to take a look at each of these, and then we'll take this thing for a spin. Now, because this is not equipped with command control, I can't run it on the main layout because my layout only allows for command control trains. So when we take this thing for a spin, we're going to go down onto the floor of the layout room where I've got an oval of track, and we'll run it around there. So anyway, let's get started. Alright, so first up, let's take a look at the armored motor car. Now, before I start, you're going to notice me using these white gloves to handle these items today. I'm not doing it just to be fancy, I'm doing it to keep fingerprints off this thing. The shiny enamel finish on these things is very unfriendly to fingerprints. And if I was to handle this with my bare hands, by the end of the video, you'd be able to see fingerprints all over this thing. So to prevent that, I'm wearing these white gloves. Now, I got the idea for these gloves from the Lionel 115th anniversary Berkshire that they put out last year. That has a mirror finish on it, and so they included some gloves in the box to allow you to handle it without getting fingerprints all over it. I thought that was a great idea, so I went onto Amazon and bought a box of 12 of these or something for a few bucks, and now I use these whenever I want to handle any of my trains that have a mirror finish or a shiny enamel finish that is not forgiving to fingerprints. But anyway, let's take a look. So as we move in closer, there's not a whole lot to see here. This is a very simple toy again, but we've got some stamped rivet detailing going on. There's a stamped door here on the side. We've got these flaps cut into the side. There are 2 on each side of the motorized unit. There are 2 screws down here and 2 on the other side. Those hold the motor onto the inside of the frame. And then down here you can see these famous red spoked wheels that Lionel used on a lot of their pre-war engines. Here on the end, we've got a nice vent that's cut into the top here, and then we've got a very, very simple latch coupler, and the other end of the unit looks exactly the same. Obviously, the coolest feature on the outside of the unit is the little gun turret on top, and it does rotate. You can turn this thing 360 degrees if you want to, but be advised that if you turn the turret, you're going to scratch the paint on the underside, and that's just inevitable. It's going to happen. So if you don't want to scratch your paint, don't turn the turret. And then finally, there's a screw up top, and if you loosen it, it'll make the turret easier to turn. If you tighten it, it'll make the turret more difficult to turn. Oh, by the way, the guns on this thing, they don't shoot anything, they don't make sounds or anything else. They're just there, and if you want to get more enjoyment out of them, you're going to have to use your imagination. And that's the way it was with most pre-war trains. Here's my favorite part of the motorized unit, the motor itself. It looks awesome. They did a great job reproducing the look and feel of a pre-war motor. This is pre-war beauty in all its glory, in my opinion. We've got the red spoked wheels that you saw earlier, those big metal gears on this side. We've got that great Lionel plate in the middle. We've got the old school pickup rollers. And then up in here, I'm not sure if you can see it, but they've even got that old school looking cardboard fiberboard plate that holds the brushes in place, and it really is a side frame motor. I mean, this looks like a motor straight out of the pre-war period. I love it. Now, as you can see, there's not a lot of room in here, and so that's why this engine doesn't have an E unit or sound or digital control or anything like that. There just isn't room. Now let's take a look at the ammunition cars that come with the set. The 2 cars are identical, so we're just going to take a look at one and then we'll move on. Just like with the motorized unit, there's not much to see here. This is a very basic box car, although they call it an ammunition car. We've got some ribs stamped into the sides. There's some additional stamp details down here. There are steps cut into each corner. We've got these very simple latch couplers on each end, just like on the motorized unit. There's an opening door on each side of the car, and there's nothing on the inside. It's very basic. And then on the bottom, we've got these very simple 2-wheel trucks, if you want to call them. And these were very common on low-end trains and sets in the pre-war era. And this was a low-end set. It was not a collector's item. It was a toy. Alright, I've got the set on a loop of Lionel Fast Track here on the floor of the layout room, and I've got a little transformer hooked up to it. I don't think I said this before, but the set does not come with track or a transformer. Even though the original set back in 1917 did, this new one does not. Anyway, let's go ahead and start it up, and we'll run it around this loop for just a minute. This right here is about the slowest this set will go without stalling. And of course, I'm not going to test the upper limits of speed because I don't want this thing to fly off the track. Although at this speed, it looks like it's about to fly off the track, so I'm not going to push it any higher than this. One final thing that I want to add before we go back up top to conclude this review is that as I was running this set around this loop of track on the floor, the wonderful smell of ozone began to emanate from the engine. It was so heartwarming, and it really took me back to when I was a kid playing with my dad's post-war Lionel trains that he had given to me. It's such a wonderfully nostalgic smell. If the smell of ozone doesn't do something for you, chances are you have not been in this hobby long enough. All right, that about wraps it up for this review. This is a gorgeous little set. I think these things have a lot of beautiful simplicity to them. It's something that you don't find in modern O-scale trains, as beautiful as they are. You really have to go back to the pre-war days to get that artistry and that beautiful simplicity that they have to them. If you're interested in picking one of these up, the retail price is right at $400, although if you go through a good MTH dealer, you can probably get a little bit of a discount off that retail price. And as always, if you're looking for a good MTH dealer, try my favorite train store, which is Legacy Station. You can find them on the web at www.legacystation.com or give them a call at 770-339-7780. Anyway, that's it for now. I'm Eric Siegel, and I'll see you next time. To discuss this model or any other O-Gauge trains and to meet other O-Gauge modelers, check out the O-Gauge Railroading Magazine online forum at ogrforum.ogaugerr.com.